Welcome in to 11 Personnel. Nick Roush here with Adam Luckett. And as always, we're brought to you by our good friends at Monticello Bank. With 128 years of service, Monticello Bank is proud to say they go everywhere the Wildcats go. It means if you're in Canada, following the team like our pal producer Stephen Peak is right now, or whether you're going down to Nashville for SEC Media Days like we will be next week, the Go NBC mobile app goes wherever you need to go. Or you can visit one of their convenient locations, 21 branches in 14 different markets. You can't be around for 128 years unless you have great service. And at Monticello Bank, that's where people matter. Find Monticello Bank on the web at mbcbank.com. Monticello Bank, where people matter. Member FDIC Equal Housing Lender. Luckett, I got it today. The bug bit me today. I don't know what it is. And it's one of those things, too, that once we get into the grind of SEC Media Days, like by Thursday, a week from now, I'm going to be dead. But right now, I'm just salivating. So excited because, look, it's like I'm seeing pictures of Gus with next to a Big 12 helmet and Scott Satterfield with the Cincinnati polo on. I'm just fired up, man. Football's here.
Yeah, I'm the same with you. Like, I've been watching Big 12 Media Days. I may have had the sound on for the Big 12 while the basketball game was playing yesterday. That's how excited I am. So, yeah, I mean, there's been some good stuff, I think, to come out of that already. Neil Brown was throwing daggers at the media.
Oh.
They were picked last place, and he was like, that's bullshit pretty much, and was giving reasons why they're not going to finish last this year. And he's on the hot seat, obviously.
Right.
Mike Gundy talked about how this new clock rule – it's going to be like an NFL game where you get a lead with 7 minutes left in the game. It's going to be easy to bleed out the clock. So you're going to have to be cautious of that. Then the next day, Gus Malzahn is acting like it's not going to matter. My issues with Gus Malzahn, he puts that tempo hat on, and he thinks it's going to solve everything. I kind of lean towards Gundy on that. If you can run the football late in these games, you're going to burn that clock. And towards the end of the first half, too. I think it's going to be a huge deal to help. If you're in the business of shrinking possessions, shrinking games, versus playing tempo and creating a bunch of possessions, I think the former, this rule is going to help them out a lot. And I think Kentucky kind of falls in that. And so that's been an interesting point to follow. Dave Aranda pretty much admitted, I made a mistake not using the transfer portal. We need to use that more. If you're not using it, what the hell are you doing? So, going different than Dabo Swinney. So there's been some good stuff to go out of that, and I think we'll get some more when we get to Nashville next week.
Sonny Dykes was my favorite, though.
And I didn't even get to that, right.
He said Missouri went to more Big 12 championships than SEC, and it's like, remember when they won the SEC East the first 2 years they were there? But Sonny, he was a little unplugged at the time. He was busy winning 4 games at Cal. So he might have been a little distracted when Mizzou was racking up dubs in the SEC. I don't know. I just love that, like, when you get this, sometimes it's kind of a roll of the dice. Like, you don't know if you're going to get spicy or boring coaches. Right. And it does make sense that Sonny's coming off of his best year ever. I mean, he took freaking TCU to the college football playoff. You should come in like you're Vince McMahon, strolling down the aisleway. And watching them at Jerry World, it very much has the setting of a, WrestleMania type event, right? Whereas,
I was going to ask you that.
Should we? Big.
What is the SEC? Why aren't we just doing this at the Titan Stadium?
See,
I know Peter Burns has made the do the SEC nights or whatever, where you just do it and you sell tickets, fans can go, and you make it a primetime TV event, kind of similar to what the draft, what NFL has done with the draft. I wonder if the SEC would ever, because it is a spectacle in Dallas. They have the mascots there, the band's there. They play the fight song, and the mascots come out and do a cheer or whatever. And they're all in that stadium. It is a big spectacle, but SEC is a spectacle, but it's different. But the Big 12, right. I mean, it's pretty. They've made it like a pep rally almost.
Well, Big Ten, didn't they do Lucas Oil last year?
They still do. Theirs is in Lucas Oil.
See, and I kind of like the College Football Hall of Fame is good because it has like a big feel, but it's
Right.
not, like it's got the high ceilings and everything, but it's not too like you're not just in this cavernous empty stadium. So I'm fascinated by what the SEC setup will be. It would have
Yeah.
been really cool if they just threw us in the Ryman, one of those like you want to talk about a venue, right? Like getting us in this old historical music venue would be
Or
pretty
just
damn
send us
cool.
to Opryland, and it would have taken us 2.5 hours to find out where the
Oh
thing's
my
set up.
gosh.
Just like
We would
every year at the Music City Bowl for their press conference, day before
I
game.
I know we mentioned this 6 months ago, and I apologize to our listeners for hearing it again, but I'll die happy if I never have to go back to that place. Like that is the Cracker Barrel of resorts, And like I love Cracker Barrel, so that's doing it a disservice.
Just
It's the Gatlinburg of like it's just even
the music,
Gatlinburg has its
the
ups.
the Music City Bowl in general. Just no thanks until they make it a big game, which it will be when they get that stadium built. It's going to get probably that New Year's Six rotation,
Right.
potentially host a national title, but probably going to host the Super Bowl. But yeah, let's pass on Music City Bowls until we get to that point.
Well, we're going to talk a little bit more about SEC Media Days and what we expect to hear. But first and foremost, we took a week off, so we got to play some catch up. And I want to start with the commitments because Luckett, I think everybody needs to, around the Kentucky football fan base, needs to give you a Laurel and hearty handshake because as soon as you left, the commitments started rolling in, and it was well timed. But so thanks first and foremost. Secondly, which one were you most watching from afar and like, damn it, I need to get in the film room right now and start crunching some tape?
Yeah, that's a pretty easy one for me here. Terry and Nichols. I think this is a really big recruiting win. Like I think this kid's going to be able to come in and play as a freshman. I project him to be a multi-year starter here. He's the type of player that they don't really get on the recruiting trail. You're talking about a top 200 corner back prospect. He's got good testing data. He's run a 4.5 40 at this stage. He's got a broad jump over 10. Solid size, 5'11", 6 foot, 180, 85 pounds. Kind of the size of Carrington Valentine. So I think he's going to, and on tape, I think he's going to be able to play that boundary quarterback position for Kentucky. And you just kind of, and when you watch him on tape, he's pretty good as an off-coverage defender. He's got good spatial awareness, so in zone coverage, he's going to be able to react, trigger down, tackle, but also has a physicality to match up with bigger receivers at the top of routes and cover. Just a really big recruiting win. Like they just don't get, they haven't gotten one. They haven't got a top 200 cornerback in Mark Stoops' entire tenure. So this is a big win, and it was over, Nick, big-time schools. Michigan and Penn State both wanted this guy. They beat out Michigan and Penn State for Nichols. Alabama and Ohio State were both keeping this recruitment warm, where if they would have missed on a couple targets, they were going to come in light on him. So this is a big-time recruiting win, and this is a guy, like for me, recruiting now, high school recruiting, it's more about, like I think you can take some swings on guys, and I think we're seeing Kentucky do that because you really need to find star power as high school recruits, and then you can find complementary role players if you miss on guys in the portal. I think we just saw Kentucky do that. Find some guys at running back, find some guys at tackle, find some guys at guard, and just kind of find some guys at cornerback and plug them in. But to find stars, typically, you're not really doing that in the portal outside of quarterback, I would say. It can be typically harder to find that. But you really need to find stars high school recruiting. And I think Nichols can be a guy, multi-year starter here. I think he could, I would project him to be a draft pick. He's a really good-looking prospect, and I think that was a really big recruiting win for them.
The thing I liked about him is you see the anticipation on tape. Like some of his highlights, the ball's just not even going there because he's jumping routes. He's cutting people off when they're trying to go across his face and slants and whatnot. And even when he does make mistakes, he's got the speed to be able to track down.
Long speed, right.
Yeah, I mentioned it in the rapid reaction, but like when I was up there for his announcement, once I got him talking ball, like he was ready to talk, like he was ready to go all day. And even after we turned the cameras off, like we're still just talking ball. He's one of those kids who just loves it. Loves it. Appears to have his head screwed on right, and that's kind of that's a great sign, I think, long term, because that's the hardest thing to evaluate, right? Is what's
Yeah.
going on between the ears. Whereas, so to Ryan Nichols, you're a big fan of him. The day before, Kentucky got Elijah Groves, and I don't know what's going on between the ears, but on that tape, man, he's just a fun ball player. And like, I know that like we get a little. I think folks can get. We can be too technical sometimes. Like, well, is he fitting the runs? Is he keeping his outside shoulder free? And like all that stuff is important to an extent. But like this guy's just got pure athleticism, right? Like he's just blowing dudes the hell up. He's not wrapping up because he doesn't need to. They're flying 5 yards back. You know, like they're the catches he's made. He just has fun tape where, I mean, Win Bowden, did he do anything fundamental in his entire Kentucky football career? No, but it didn't freaking matter because he was just an ass kicker, right? Like he was just a freak out there. And I feel like Groves, I know he doesn't play in the best high school football classification in the state of Tennessee, but like he's just an athlete that's head and shoulders above everybody else. And I trust Brad White enough to be able to instill enough fundamentals in there to make it happen. And we've seen a track record with that with Jamin Davis, with Trevin Wallace, some guys who weren't technically sound at the linebacker position, but had the athleticism, had the traits, and grown into quality college football starters at inside linebacker.
Yeah, I would put Groves, Nick, up there with Cutter Boley as high ceiling in this class.
Yeah,
if it hits, they're first round picks.
Yeah, like
no
ceiling's the roof.
Yeah, full stop.
Crazy.
If it hits,
the length, yeah, I mean it's all there.
If it hits, we're going to the draft to cover it because they're going in the first round. Groves, the position fit. It's you gotta. Where does that happen? And for me, like how big does he get? How much does he fill out that frame? That's going to say a lot. How big is he right now? How big does he get? That's going to say a lot in this. For him, he's an athlete playing football. Guys with his makeup, though, Nick, they usually stick. If you're long, can run, and can hit, you should be playing football. I mean, full stop. It's not that complicated. If you're big, fast, and are not afraid to knock people's block off, you're probably going to be pretty damn good at this sport. I mean, it was made for big, strong people. Big, strong, and fast people. That's what this sport was made for. And he fits that build.
That's great analysis.
I mean,
I love it.
So he's going to be, like, he's going to play. Don't overthink it. He's going to be a good player. It's just how good can he be? And where does he fit there? I think a guy like Isaiah Simmons is a popular comp, I think, going to be for him. Not saying, Simmons is with the Cardinals, was a first-round pick, was a star at Clemson. But he didn't really have a position. Right? He plays nickel, he plays in the box, plays edge. They played him at some deep safety at Clemson. I think Groves might be a little bit in that, so they're going to have to find a spot for him. I would think they're just going to plug him into that will spot and, hey, see ball, go find ball, run and hunt, and tackle.
We'll
see how big. But if he gets big enough, though, you potentially you might have a versatile guy who can play off ball and who can bend the edge, rush the corner on third downs.
Yeah.
So very intriguing prospect, I think there, and he's recruit with I think some upward growth because he's just so raw. If he and they're going to have to hold off some programs probably for him, but if he has a big senior season, you could potentially see him being like a Trevor Wallace where he just blows up and becomes like a top 100 recruit by the time December or February rolls around.
There's no doubt about it. I'm a big fan of Elijah Groves. A solid recruiting win, and like you said, I get the sense Nichols isn't really interested in dragging it out a lot, but in Groves' case, where he didn't have, I mean, it was NC State and Purdue were the two big ones. So
him and Quavo Marshall are both SEC traditional footprint. You're talking about South Georgia. You're talking about Middle Tennessee. Some other schools are going to be, so you're going to have to fight off some guys to hold on to them. And I would even put Antoine Smith in there too if he has a big senior year. Those guys, some other schools are going to come for those guys, but at the same time, Kentucky's going to be able to flip probably some guys from other schools too. And so it's a long process. We're still, signing day's still 5 months away.
Yeah,
we still got a long way to go. But right now, you look at Kentucky's class; they got 14 commits. They're probably Jason Patterson, Harley Gilmore, and Brian Robinsons are the names to watch here,
Big
I would say,
three.
over the
Yep.
next month.
From next. Mm-hmm.
After that, they're pretty much in the nitpicking range, right? I don't think they're going to want to get more than 20 or so guys in this class,
Yeah.
save room for the
Mm-hmm.
portal. And so where do you go? And I think what we're seeing in a lot of college football recruiting is most of these classes are wrapped up by July 4th weekend, essentially. Most of the work is done. And so for
Then
Kentucky,
you
I
just
believe
get in yeah.
most of the hay's in the barn, but they really need to close on these last three, and then selectively recruit and use official visits to try to close on some or close or slash flip some other prospects.
They did add a little bit of scholarship capital. Some news from from early in the week. Sam Anelli and Josh Jones are medically retiring from football, which means that they get to stay on academic scholarship, but it's not counting towards Kentucky's 85-man limit. Anelli was one of those high ceiling prospects that didn't hit.
South Florida.
He was a top 100 guy in Rivals overall, but from Nigeria, originally came over to play basketball. He put on some weight, but it just wasn't there. For whatever reason, it wasn't there. Josh Jones, a big dude, and hell, even when we saw him at the bowl game, like, who is this guy? This guy's enormous. But just in particular in his case, he had a lot of injuries here,
Yeah,
so I think
he had knee problems throughout, so
yeah.
never really had a chance.
So he's the only guy Kentucky's been able to get out of Phoenix City Central there in South Alabama. But nevertheless, they at least were able to get one. Best of luck to those guys moving forward. Before we move off of the roster stuff, any of the other commitments you wanted to touch on? Because I'll say I was a little surprised they took Q. Was it Q
Quay
Scott?
Sheed? Yeah.
Quay Sheed. Yeah. Little surprised he was a take, and I also don't know what to make of David Washington, the receiver, because we've talked about it on here before. Mid 3-star receiver, he looks fine on tape, but there's not like anything where I'm like, gotta have him, So
Yeah.
I don't really know what to think about either of those guys.
Yeah, you on Washington, you're right about the receivers. Those guys typically of that recruiting profile have not hit here, but this is Cohen and Woodward are different, so I think you got to give them some benefit of the doubt because they weren't here before, the scheme wasn't here before, yada yada yada. Washington, I think he's a true slot receiver, Nick. He runs good routes at this stage in his career. He breaks tackles on tape, which is really important for me as a slot receiver. One of the reasons I wasn't super high on Anthony Brown at the beginning is because I just didn't see that on tape. And that's concerning because a lot of a slot receiver to me is generating after the catch, right? You get the ball in the intermediate areas, it's creating yards after catch. So that was good to see. I didn't see burner speed, but there were some reports out there that I believe Kentucky maybe had him clocked in the low 4.4s. So maybe that might be something interesting. Now, Washington, he had a ton of interest and offers. Now, this is where the recruiting game comes in. He plays for just an absolute powerhouse. So did he have offers just because he was on St. Joseph Prep? Or did he have offers because they were really interested in adding him? It came down to official visits. It came down to Kentucky and Virginia. Wisconsin was also involved on campus. So that's who you beat out at the end of the day. I think if he's your number 3 or number 2 receiver in the class, I think it's fine. But I think it's really important to get Harley Gilmore. As far as Quay Sheed Scott goes, a little interesting take here.
Okay.
Kentucky's banking on their eval here to me, right? Quay Sheed, they essentially won this recruitment over App State and Old Dominion. Quay Sheed Scott plays for a small school in South Carolina, plays both ways. Now, he actually has some breakaway speed on tape. And he's reported that he ran a 4.4, low 4.4 at Kentucky. I believe at South Carolina camp, he ran an even better time. I believe they had him at 4.39. Now,
wow.
And there were some other schools in on him that I think wanted him to camp. I think he only camped at Kentucky, or at South Carolina. But he camps at South Carolina. They don't offer him. Camps at Kentucky. Kentucky offers him, keeps it quiet, and then gives him the green light to commit there on July 4th weekend. I think Scott, defensive back. I don't think he's an outside cornerback. He told Zach Gagan that he's playing cornerback. I would kind of put him at kind of a nickel or safety potentially. Again, he's got some traits. He can run. Pretty good size. He knocks people back on tape. But to me, Nick, they're betting on traits here. on a lower level guy. I mean, it's got some bust rate, I would say, but I think they missed on some guys here, and I think they missed on some guys, and that created a spot for Quashit Scott. Now we'll see if it works. They've had some hit rate with this. Like you get De'Aaron Jackson earns an offer in camp. He's becoming a multi-year starter for you.
Mm-hmm.
You also got guys like Jacob Dixon, who didn't last a couple weeks in the program, that earned a camp offer.
Right.
Similar last, you've got Brandon White, who kind of did the same thing. I think a lot of people are skeptical to see if he ever fits in anywhere. So we'll see if it hits, but I think this take was they missed on some guys. They wanted to get a body in here, and this is a guy I think with some high upside because of the physical traits. But there's reasons I think to be skeptical about that because like they just missed on some guys. Vabu Torre goes to Penn State, right? Antonio White was another guy they were recruiting out of Lilburn, Georgia, Parkview, Metro Atlanta. He picked Rutgers over Kentucky. I believe he was a take for Kentucky. And there's some other, like Brandon Joseph was a safety from Orlando. They got on campus with Kai Bates last summer. They never did, could get him on campus over this summer. So, yeah, I think they just probably missed on some guys, and they're taking a guy with some ceiling. But for him, a lot of it's going to be, what does he do this senior year? Does he have a big year? If he has a big year, you could see a little bit more with him. I think they might have something, but it's definitely, I think, a little bit of a roll of the dice here because you're betting on traits in a class full of guys with this profile. It's a high upside, low floor class, but that kind of gets back to what I was saying earlier about how maybe you're taking bigger swings because you can find safer bets in the portal if things don't work out.
That's true. I would feel a lot better if we had more of a track record on Collins's guys, like that are big swings like Jordan Robinson and the other Livingstone kid from this year, Kevin Larkins Jr. So I'm not really sure how to feel one way or another just yet on those dudes. But we'll see. We'll come to find out in the very near future. But things seem to be going well in UK land. Things are not going well up in Chicagoland. But before we get to that, I need to tell you about where things are always great, and that's with our friends at Bird Dogs. If you have not worn a pair of Bird Dogs shorts before, let me tell you, it'll change your life. It really will. The shorts, they come with a liner in them. You don't even need to wear drawers because they're so comfortable. And my favorite part too, Luckett, is they have very much a feel that's like, I feel like I'm wearing gym shorts, but these are also but they don't look like gym shorts. You know what I mean? So you can wear them with your polo. Right. And still feel classy or not. They've got it all at Bird Dogs. Plenty of different styles, and they got nice pants as well, nice slacks that we're going to be rocking down at SEC Media Days this week. And if you want to try them out, try them now. Use the promo code KSR or visit birddogs.com/KSR. You're going to get this awesome Yeti mug. And it's not a knockoff Yeti mug either. I've been drinking out of it all week. Fantastic products at Bird Dogs. The highest quality, the best of the best at Bird Dogs. Promo code KSR or birddogs.com/KSR to try out a pair of shorts or their nice slacks today. Luckett, Northwestern. I don't think we need to completely revisit the mess that happened. I'm ready to go and move on to what's next territory with Northwestern because this job opening is fascinating. It's the first time you have a very much all right, this is a Power 2 job. It's not a Power 5,
yes.
as our colleague Andy Staples put it, which, by the way, his show is premiering next week, 8 p.m. on the On3 YouTube channel. So if you're subscribed to KSR, subscribe to On3 as well. You'll be able to get that show 8 p.m. Sunday through Thursday, and then it'll come out on your podcast platforms the Monday after. But it's a Power 2 job now. Like, it's Big Ten and SEC.
Mm-hmm.
How much are people going to be chomping at the bit for this position with the baggage that comes along with it, even though they're already going to be spending some of that Big Ten money? They're pumping in something like $800 million for a new facility there after they already got a brand new facility. I mean, that practice facility there is gorgeous on the shores of Lake Michigan.
Yeah. Yeah, the big thing here at Northwestern, one, I would just want to start off and say, we truly don't know these people. Like, we think we get to know them and we follow them, but you truly don't know like what's going on there.
Oh yeah,
right?
yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like, this is just another perfect example of Pat Fitzgerald was Northwestern football.
He was
From
he was a golden
Chicago,
boy there. Yeah.
All-American linebacker, played for their
Took him
best
to the
team
Rose
ever.
Bowl.
Head
Yep.
coach dies of a heart attack. He becomes a head coach at 33, leads them to a winning season, and they respond from it. Goes on to coach there. They go to a couple Big Ten championship games. They kick the crap out of Illinois almost every season. The rival in state, and they're really competitive for a losing program consistently. And then this happens. I think the administration kind of botched how they handle this.
Oh, certainly. They might get fired. All of them.
And if you take out the COVID year, he's like 3-24 or something in Big Ten. 3-20, 3-24 in or 2-25 in Big Ten play over the last 3 years. If
they were pretty good that year, though, in being 7-2 in that COVID season.
If it happens a few years before then, when Kentucky played in the Music City Bowl, he probably doesn't get fired. I mean, that record probably had something to do with that.
Oh, they averaged 9 wins a year over that 4-year period.
Yeah, and it was if they wanted to, they could have wrote out the
suspension
PR storm. I mean, but they were just horribly planned, and then the student newspaper is doing all this stuff. I mean, it's a pretty crazy story, but that's been covered places. Moving on. Now with Northwestern, Nick, after doing some digging, they really have only one booster. It's the Ryan family. Like, those are the people that are making everything happen. And they were really tight with Pat Fitzgerald. So you have to wonder, are they going to be tight with the new coach?
Right.
They're the ones that made the move for the facility. They're the ones mostly banking this $800 million, $700 million upgrade they have planned for Ryan Field, their stadium. So what does that happen with the new coach? That's something to keep in mind with this job. But with that said, Northwest, the easy can take, Nick, is just, these smart schools can't play. They can't win. But the Big Ten has Indiana, Illinois, Maryland, Rutgers,
Purdue.
They have all these sub-50 historically recruiting operations.
Minnesota.
You can win at Northwestern. Full stop. Like, coaches are going to see this job and think they can win. I think because of that. Because talent-wise, they're at the bottom, but there's a bunch of teams with them.
And in Chicago, like, you mean to tell me if you got shiny new facilities there, like, you can't recruit there? Right.
So with that, and I think Staples brought up a good point, is you do have to think about these jobs differently. It's all about the Benjamins. Like, they're going to be able to pay top dollar, and these other schools aren't. And for these Big 12 and these ACC coaches and the Pac-12 coaches, they have to think differently now with how they have to have a bigger picture of where the sport's heading, and they have to think, do I need to lock in a spot with a Big 10 or SEC school if I get the opportunity?
Yeah.
You just figure it out later when you get there. I think that's important to remember. So that's that. Now, if that I think, like, I've talked about this on KS Board, I think Brad White makes a lot of sense here. You look at Mike Elko at Duke. You look at Clark Lee at Vanderbilt. Defensive head coaches. I think there's value in going defense first because everybody wants offense, typically. So you get these
especially in the Big Ten West. I know it's changing, but still.
Brad's a smart cat.
Went to Wake Forest. He went to one of those nerd schools, right?
If he wanted to, he might have been able to get into Northwestern, number one. He has experience at a small school. He has experience at a service academy. He coached NFL in that area.
Yep.
I think
he's been in the SEC.
Matches. I think he matches the mold of both Elko and Lee. Lee obviously went to Vanderbilt. I believe Elko went to I think he's known as being a smart guy. So I think he kind of fits that. If Northwestern went, like, if you were Adam Luckett's coaching firm, Brad Light would be on the short list along with some other head coaches, I think, in the Big 12 specifically,
or ACC maybe,
or ACC. Yeah, if you can get Clawson out of Duke or out of Wake Forest, I don't know how easy that would be. But yeah, I don't think it's a terrible job now. We had the Coach O report. And Nick, what were your
Which
thoughts on that?
that
Because I have thoughts.
that was like shout out to the Medill kids for doing some great journalism. This Medill kid was trying to strike while the iron was hot. Took a source and ran with it. I love Matt Brown, who does the Extra Points newsletter. He does a lot of you probably know him best from doing all the EA Sports news that he'll cover on that college football game. He tweeted, "Are we sure that Ed Orgeron knows the difference between Northwestern and Northwestern State?" Which
I saw that.
I thought that was a great line. You would talk about culture.
Square peg, round hole.
Yeah. Like Coach O can't play that game there. He can play it in some of these places. He ain't playing that game there.
I have a better chance to be the next Northwestern head coach than Ed Orgeron.
I mean, I just can't even imagine the conversations he would have, like with those boosters, like just all of it. You know, I mean, the only thing he has remotely in common with anybody from there is he could get in a superfan sketch and like fit in fine, just going, "Oh, Bears," you know, like
yeah,
that's it, full stop. Maybe he could guzzle a hot dog or two down as well, but like that's not
now, Nick, there are rumors that Ed Orgeron likes to go out on the town, have a good time. Not sure Chicago's the place for you there, if you're trying to hide that. But maybe it is. You know, in a smaller SEC, you can hide that. But in Chicago, maybe it is. You can just blend in out there.
I don't know how many places Coach O can blend in anywhere. You know, like it just.
Yeah, but Chicago's not. It's not like Nashville. You know, like it's an NFL town. After that, people aren't watching college football. If they are, they're watching the Big Ten. Like I guarantee you, Nick, he could go into a bar in Chicago, and I guarantee not many people would know who he is.
Even that being
other than
said,
wow, look at this big guy with a thick accent. This big, loud, barrel-chested dude.
The problem was it was like LSU. He would have lasted longer if it wasn't for all the other stuff, right? Like he had a lot of other stuff going on that pissed off people, boosters, but you know, like
it's a fair criticism. We've seen it twice. He cannot run a program. Like
he's great in the short, but not in the long term. That's why he's the ultimate. He's interim O. Now, if you told me they wanted to bring him in to be the interim coach for this year, then hell yeah, like I'd love it. I mean, they were really. The difference is this team's really terrible compared to the teams that he was taking over. Right, this is a 1-11 team that's coming back, and I'm going to assume that they're just going to ride with one of the. They're just going to ride this out for a year, regardless, with their guys, and then completely flip things next year. Because even if you hired somebody, they aren't going to be able to hire a full staff of assistants to do to start a season in 2 weeks. So I'm assuming that they're going to just do the interim for a year. The one I thought was kind of intriguing would be Tommy Rees, because he's another Chicagoland guy that like if he did well at Alabama, I think there would be enough pull, enough draw. He spent all that time at Notre Dame, like there would be some draw there to think that he could do this on his own. The other one too that I'm fascinated by is Dave Clawson. Yeah, just because Wake
Forest. How long you gonna stay at Wake?
Right. And I didn't realize this until because when Fitzgerald got fired, it was low-hanging fruit for me to do a Stoops' longest tenured coach post. Clawson got there a year after Stoops did. He's been at Wake for 10 years, and I just hadn't realized it. That's a long time, and you know, whenever eventually if you're going to move up, like time's ticking, and this would check a lot of boxes, I think, for what he wants in a program.
Yeah, I think old Matt Campbell here, someone to watch.
Wouldn't that be hilarious if, like, all these years when Bruce Feldman's made him, like, the number one coach on all these lists, that he just ends up at freaking Northwestern?
I have even felt some crap for having him too low on some coaching rankings I've done in the past. But, like, for him, getting players at Iowa State's very hard for them.
Yeah.
The offense has just been terrible after Brock Purdy. It was really just 1 year, but he fired the OC. He promoted in-house. Don't know how that's going to work. He doesn't strike me as a portal guy, so he's probably going to want to go somewhere where he doesn't have to do that. Like Northwestern, I think, checks a lot of boxes for him. It's in that region. I think Northwestern has a higher recruiting ceiling than Iowa State. They've got the Big Ten cachet. I think he wants to coach in the Big Ten long term. I think
That's
it
his
makes
footprint, right?
he can recruit Ohio, Illinois, all of that. He can recruit all that there. I think that would make some sense, and it would allow him maybe to reset a little bit and maybe go in a different direction on offense without hurting his cult. He's big culture guy. Doesn't want to hurt anything. Wants to do everything in house. If it's something new, you can go a little bit out of house, out of structure,
Yeah.
and go get somebody. And you might be able to spend more money to go hire a coordinator. I think that makes some sense for him, especially if we look up and Iowa State's 3-7 heading into November. And so I think that makes a lot of sense for him. That would be one to watch. David Shaw's a name thrown out, but I don't think they can hire him because they had like the strength coach accusations where players got injured or something. So I don't think you can hire him, even though I get the allure. But yeah, I think that's it's going to be very interesting search, and they got a lot of runway here. But they got to get through this first, and they got to get the Ryan family on board because now they've got teachers at the school trying to stop, as often teachers do at big institutions.
Freaking nerds.
The nerds don't want the man ball getting all the money.
Yeah.
So you got to get through all that, and I will say that AD, like he was on vacation and he just disappeared and didn't. They haven't even had a press conference, Nick.
I don't know how you haven't had a press conference. I know they just wanted to go
that
away.
Shows
but
that shows you how much Northwestern matters up there. Like it's just not a big deal. Like they're just not a big deal up there. It's like a high school up there.
Yeah, the thing that's gonna be fun about this opening too is we're gonna kind of forget about it. It's almost like when U of L, I think it was when they got Kenny Payne, where they fired Chris Mack halfway through, in January or whatever it was, and you forgot that it was in the mix for all of these openings. And it's like, oh, yeah, like we're going to get to coaching carousel season, and it'll be, last week of November, and people are like, oh, don't forget that Northwestern's also open. So a lot of what I think what's going to happen too is how many other big time jobs are going to come open during this stretch, and
we don't know.
What are they competing against? So, but fascinating stuff at Northwestern from a coaching search perspective. We don't necessarily need to go into the nitty gritty of all the hazing and the ins and outs of all of that, but we do need to get into the ins and outs of what's going to happen next week in Nashville at SEC Media Days, where we're going to have a scandal of our own that we're going to be covering to an extent because, as you said on Monday on the KSR Football Podcast, Dom Toretto, Kirby Smart, he's.
Well, did you see what came out today?
Oh, we've got new. I saw where they held the press conference and they demanded a retraction.
Well, the AJC came back today.
Oh, they responded.
I believe I haven't really dug into this yet. No, it wasn't necessarily a response. It was a girl is suing Georgia UGA for, I guess, negligence, and I think she was in the car wreck and she was a staffer. But they've got some other issues that I really wasn't aware about on Monday after digging in. I think this was what Freddie was alluding to more. Adam Anderson, who was the star edge rusher for them, got kicked off the team right at the cocktail party in 2021. He had got accused of rape and there was a girl who at one time worked for Georgia football. And since then, I think he's got another charge against him for that same thing. Well, they kicked him off the team, but there's a freshman, or he'll be a freshman, I believe, on the team this year. A defensive lineman from North Carolina. He's got a sexual assault. He was accused of sexual assault during his recruiting visit. Now, I believe those charges were dropped. And apparently, Kirby Smart on his staff, Nick, has a fixer. He's basically a former lawyer or guy who used to work for a law firm or something. Whenever those players get whenever they have an issue, like when Jalen Carter and them got in the race and the Madison LaCroix, I believe her name was, and Devin Willock died, he was the first one on the scene. and he's the first one to talk to the police usually. Like if there's something
Right,
up,
right.
he goes. I didn't realize he had that. Like that's kind of like, why do you have that? And two,
Why do you need that? Right,
yeah, why do you need that? So that's interesting. And so the AJCs, they've been kind of they've been going at Georgia really all off season with
yeah.
stuff. You know, the
Which
racing
is
stuff hasn't stopped. There's guys have gotten citations continually. That this stuff, I mean, there's a lot going on. So now
it's good on the
at that press conference, they had two AJC reporters there, not their crime guy or their investigative reporter. I don't have his name on top of my head. Didn't write it down before.
but he was the guy that
wasn't
wrote
there.
the report.
Yeah, but he's
That
been the guy
yeah.
who's written a lot of this stuff. And I'll be like, right to media days. That's intriguing. When does Kirby go? Tuesday?
I think he's
I
Monday.
think Monday. Yeah.
But and good on the AJC. No, you're right. It was Tuesday morning. But good on the AJC though for like you need to have somebody around like that because that's not the case everywhere. Like there's a lot of places that will just let you kind of get away with murder for the lack of a better term. And I know that might be a little too, but like you need somebody there who's at least asking the right questions. Now, as far as like I thought at least some of what Georgia was saying back when they demanded the retraction, it was like, hey, you said there were 11 guys and then you only talked about 3. Who are the other 8? Like, tell us, because we'll happily take care of it. But ultimately, a lot of what this comes down to is that Kirby's lack of transparency in his discipline, it's just going to raise a lot of questions. So he's going to come back. Last year, he was feisty from that wasn't 1 year. We're here to show that we're a program.
Well, it's the rat poison. Like they're not going to eat rat poison, kind of thing.
And now it's more of a question of like, at what cost are you? What's the cost of winning at Georgia, and is it worth it? And I'm fascinated to hear how many questions about that he gets versus the like good old boy touchdown Alabama, is Carson Beck good at football sort of stuff. So that part's going to be fascinating to me. I'm also wondering too, do we get any of that residual Hugh Freeze? Like is he going to have to, because he's the same day. So all the big J's, your 40s, all of them, they're still going to be there. And so are we going to get questions like, hey, are you still DMing sexual assault victims on the reg, Hugh? Like, how's that going? Are you in control of your own Twitter account anymore?
We're getting a monologue from Brother Hugh.
God,
so,
I mean, trading out Hugh Freeze for Mike Leach is just like a kick in the groin. I mean,
yeah. Well,
that's a tough switch.
I just think, well, last time he was at a media days, I believe he went on. He only took like 2 questions because this thing lasted.
What are
they up there? 20 minutes, and he did like an 18-minute thing.
I mean, that's the Auburn way, right? Harsin used to do that too.
This first year, yeah. The second year, he just told them to all F off, pretty much.
Yeah, and then they told him to F off, and he got the hell out of town. I do think that Mississippi State. Well, before I get to that, A&M and LSU are both on day one.
Yeah.
Those are going to be some talked about teams, and what's fascinating to me is Jimbo's going to get a lot of heat. Yet at the same time, there's high expectations there. Like being second in the West is kind of where he has to be in order to cool his seat off. And I know we've made this comment before, but it's almost kind of like Cal, right? Where it's like, is Final Four too much to ask for expectations? Yeah, but it's kind of where you need if you want people to shut up, you know? So Jimbo's going to be.
Yeah. To me, it's not even that. It's just them being good. Like, they really only had 1 season where they were. I should say 2.
They had 2.
The 2018 season, they were good.
And then they had the year, was it 2 years ago, where they beat Bama? And, which is hard to judge.
2021, they beat Bama, but they really didn't have a good season. But they had their quarterbacks were injured. Like Calzada was playing for them.
So they were like 8-4, but they got a Bama win at home, so you know you felt good, just enough. But but my point, Luckett, is he's had a lot of those things where he's done enough to kind of pour some water on the fire a little bit. But I don't know if there's any like no. I think they're just sick of it. And they're like, no, like do more than just enough. Like exceed our wildest expectations, sort of deal. And
Yeah,
I think he felt that sense of urgency, and that's why he was like, all right, I'll go get Bobby Petrino.
yeah. He'll get a Texas question too, and he'll take some dig at the Longhorns. But yeah, I mean he's gonna be. They're in it. I mean, there might be the most interesting team in the SEC because of Bobby Petrino, his contract, the pressure to win now, the roster. Like you've got all these ball players. Like you need to go win some games. So yeah, that'll be definitely something to follow early in the week.
Here's a question for you.
And then how quick does Saban get visibly upset about the quarterback questions?
Oh man, he's gonna address it to like in his monologue to try to like not. I know you're asking about quarterback. He's gonna try to address it, and then somebody's gonna ask it. I kind of want you to ask it just so he can like lecture you again.
You want me to get just verbally taken to the woodshed again?
I mean, because it's going to piss him off. You know, it's the
no, but I have a way. He jokes so with me, like we're on that kind of level. It's just kind of just two boys talk shop. You know, it's not like
I'm not changing, so quit asking.
I'm not doing it, so quit asking. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that was the last time we had QB issues with him. That's what we got.
Yeah. How does Kentucky make a splash this week? Like, what is it that people will say about Kentucky big picture? Because, I mean, JJ might do something that's splashy, but for the most part, these are not real buzzy kind of players that Kentucky's bringing.
Well, one, it's going to have to come from Stoops. And it'll probably be on the schedule, the 8-9 debate.
Yeah.
He usually gives a feisty answer when asked about that. He will, I bet, Seth Emerson from The Athletic, because he's the one that kind of, one of the bigger ones that writes about all the time, or it could be one of the national guys.
Yeah.
That's been covering that, Ross Allen, some of them. He's going to, and they will get it at some point, whether it's on ESPN radio or up there with Feinbaum or in the room, or maybe even with you all in the scrum with local media. He will give some, I would say, some borderline feisty quote on that about where Kentucky stands and where they want it to be. That would be my prediction. Because Eli Cox is he's very like, I would imagine he's an SID's favorite player to send out.
Oh, yeah. You don't need Tony Neely doesn't need to be telling him any instructions going into it.
You're not. He don't like. He's very pro in that he answers questions without answering the question.
Mm-hmm.
He gives short answers. Gets in and out of questions fast, and because of that, he gets in and out of media sessions fast. And so, like that, they brought him here. I was not surprised at all. And then JJ can be a walking soundbite at times. There was a time last year where he was just pretty, like Cohen's first year in the summer, he was just telling us who was starting who, where was doing this, that. We knew everything. Like I said, we don't even need to go to practice. Just give us JJ Weaver every day, and we would find out everything. Yeah.
I'm curious if, like, when we had Josh Pate on here and some of the guest hosts on KSR, like a lot of the SEC talking heads, for lack of a better term, have talked about Devin Leary and that people aren't giving him enough of credit. Yeah. So I'm wondering if that also becomes a bigger, like, if we show up and all of a sudden people are saying, like, Devin Leary's great. You know, like, he should be the best quarterback in the SEC, not Jaden Daniels or KJ Jefferson. Like, I'm wondering if, like, Jordan Rodgers is going to have a take like that or something that gets people
Cohen's going to get some shine. He'll get some shine from some national guys.
Mm-hmm.
I actually got ahead of that, Nick, this week at KSR Plus. Subscribe right now. We got a flash sale going on. $1 American dollar.
Oh, yeah. Do it now. $1, 3 months, and then you can just do a year for 50% off, which is like $40, I want to say.
Mm-hmm.
So lock it in.
In SEC Media Days, or not really SEC Offensive Player of the Year, typically who wins this award is one of the best players in the country. A lot of times it's the Heisman Trophy winner. And it's typically a player who's led their team to a outstanding season. Hendon Hooker last year,
Mm-hmm.
Joe Burrow, obviously a bunch of national championship winners on there. Trey Mason in 2013 when Auburn had their big breakthrough. On and on and on. So typically
Cam Newton, yeah.
that's a big time. That's a big dog that wins that award typically. But we're entering a year where picking your quarterback for the first team isn't easy. There's
Yeah,
legitimately 4 or 5 guys you could pick, and you could have I think a pretty healthy debate. Where last year was, if you didn't pick Bryce Young, if you didn't pick Heisman Trophy winner, what you're
right.
just being different
even,
just to be different.
Even with Mike, like, I would have even had Will Rogers in the mix if Mike Leach was still there, just from a production standpoint. We're filling out, we're sharing our selections, what we're voting on Friday, and I went back and forth between KJ Jefferson and Jaden Daniels. I didn't know who to put there. Like, I just kind of, who do you think's going to have a better season from ultimately I decided, like, well, if Jefferson's healthy, then I think he'll matter more to his program than maybe Jaden Daniels might. But like that,
I think he's better if he's healthy. Yeah, me personally.
So like it's. But where does Leary come into that mix too? I think is the point where you're ultimately getting at, because if he exceeds expectations and Kentucky's second in the East and they end up going to a New Year's Six game, then he could very much be in that conversation.
Yeah. So pretty much, I wrote this out and was like, whoever wins this award. That's maybe what you should be trying to find. Instead of who's finding the sneaky team, find the guy who you think is going to win this trophy, and that's going to be the team that has a breakthrough season. And so I tried to pull as many realistic candidates as possible. I got to 8. Quinshon Judkins at Ole Miss is an obvious one. Carson Beck at Georgia, just because he plays quarterback for Georgia. I put Juice Wells in there because he's the best returning receiver, I think, and I don't think Rattler's going to win it, but he's got the connection with Rattler, and a lot of people are high on him. Like, you could see him going for 1,600, 1,700 yards and maybe pushing for All-American honors. That could be good enough to win it. But then you got a bunch of quarterbacks. Like, I had Jaden Daniels and KJ Jefferson in there. I had a Connor Wegman in there at A&M because if they have a breakthrough, it's probably good.
Yep.
And Joe Milton, obviously.
Right.
I threw Leary in there. And I think Leary, preseason, I think he's a real candidate to go out and have the year, because if you write it out on paper just with Kentucky, right? All right. The O-lines, they have, first off, to start what they have. They have a play caller that everybody thinks is good. The last time here, put together a top 10 success rate offense. They were awesome last time he was here. You have legitimate star power at receiver. Barry and Brown and Dane Key, I would be comfortable saying they're both going to be top 100 picks when they come out for the draft. Like, you have a legitimate star power at receiver. You have a good college third receiver in Tavian Robinson. Like, last year was not good, but I've seen him play good football in college. You have a good tight end room. Jordan Dingle's got, I think, NFL upside. Josh Caddis is our hero at 11 personnel. And then at running back, they're just going to be able to find some guys. I feel very confident in that. I think the floor is pretty high. I think the ceiling's probably a little low, but they're going to be competent, more than competent at running back. And then all line's a big question, but you go out, you get 2 starting tackles, you're going to be better than you were last year. They've got all these starts now. They should not be they should be middle of the road. So if you have all of that, all the pieces are there for Leary, to me, to have this big season, right? Protection holds up, good play caller, good weapons, you got pros outside. All of it sets up for him to really potentially get there. You can draw it out, especially when you look at the schedule. Like, he could get off to a really fast start.
Yeah. And really do some stat padding. Yeah.
Right.
Like, put up some
first
huge
3 games.
numbers.
Like, if you go down to Vanderbilt and he puts, like, say he gets a hot start and he's throwing for 330 yards a game, and then he goes down to Vanderbilt and throws 280, 4 touchdowns, 22 or 25 or something. Kentucky puts up 35 points, wins 35-17. Everyone's like, oh, look at what Leary, and then it sets the stage for, like, a huge October against Florida and Georgia. Well, I get Florida's September, but it might as well be an October game, September 30th. I think it's there for him. In Kentucky's season, there's going to be some big, if they hit where they're supposed to hit, they should be. I don't think it's an unfair expectation to be 6-1, October 28th. Tennessee comes to town in a game that could be for second place in the East.
Yeah.
And then if you got a quarterback like that, if Leary's having a year and he maybe leads you to a win there, I think the path is there for him to really have kind of a big season. And I don't think it'd be crazy if we look up in November and he's like in running for best quarterback in the SEC. I mean, that's kind of where we're at. A lot of that is, I think, Nick, I believe SEC Mike has done quarterback rankings. Brad Crawford did some this week.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, like, I can't believe who Mike had. Graham Mertz was towards the bottom, though.
Yeah.
And I don't think Graham Mertz is terrible. Like, I think he can play quality football at times.
I've got Brady Cook as my bottom.
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't think those guys are terrible. But I don't the ceiling is not very high. What I'm getting to.
Yeah, yeah. The point you made about the running backs today too, with Etienne and I can't think of the other guy's name now. It's escaping me.
Monticello Johnson.
Yeah, like they if they can block, they're gonna be able to run the ball.
Yeah.
So, no, I like this scenario that you kind of unfolded. Like there certainly are some challenges, but that is what's fun about SEC Media Days, right? Is hearing basically you have all of these takes out there, you're taking in information, and you're also formulating strong ass opinions on teams. Like I'm strongly out on Ole Miss this year. Like Judkins surprised us last year, but they have a very, very soft schedule. They got Tulane in week 2. I know it's at home, and that isn't the same Tulane team that won the Cotton Bowl last year. But they won the freaking Cotton Bowl last year and beat USC. You know, like that's a good ball team. They got to go to Georgia and Alabama. They got LSU at home, but like they got a very tough schedule. I think when we get to win totals, I'm going to be awfully intrigued at that 7.5 number that they're currently sitting at now. So that's what's fun. That's what's fun about all this is you finally you really get to. This is a great time to get to know all of the teams and kind of be able to start duking it out online over who's better than who. Like I cannot wait to sandbag the hell out of South Carolina and Shane Beamer. Like it's going to be great. It's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to be down there. We're getting there Monday morning. Greg Sankey will take the podium at 12:30 p.m. Eastern time. Is when all the festivities get going. The SEC Network's got coverage starting with SEC this morning at 8 a.m. So you'll be able to watch all the action there. We're going to be here on the KSR YouTube channel. And make sure you're subscribed to 11 Personnel on your podcast feed and KSR Football Podcast. We'll be doing a little juggling back and forth between the two of them, between me, Luckett, Drew, and Freddie. But we're going to have a lot of stuff on YouTube talking to some of your favorite SEC, ESPN personalities. So there's just a lot. There's a lot to chew on all week long, and make sure that you're locked in here. You're subscribed. KS Board, we're gonna have a ton.
Just join. You just need to join that. Well, one, we're gonna have some more in-depth stuff and some X's and O and personnel stuff. I'll be writing some stuff while we're down there, stuff we learned. But the message board, the behind-the-scenes thread, you're gonna want to be on there. Just trust us. That's going to be fun. Just get that join for especially, that. It's $1. Join right now for that reason.
Especially once we get out and about.
In Nashville, this is going to be a different animal. Right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Like, we didn't have the message. I don't think we had the
Tootsie's is going to be a scene.
Walters, did we? Yeah.
The Tootsie's is going to be a scene, right? Like, where there's going to be a who's who of journos and talking heads and Tootsies. So, Tootsie's never going to see it on Tuesday night like this. So, like, this is going to be a scene. So, join the behind-the-scenes thread is going to be.
It's going to be
You're going to want to be on there.
It's going to be worth
we might even see Shane Beamer on a Monday night at Legends. Who knows? Wednesday night at Legends, whenever the night before there. He might be recording a podcast there. I mean, who knows what we'll see down there?
Oh, how many Radio Row appearances is Shane Beamer going to make? Right? Like, they're going to have to put Prime out of there just so he goes to the podium, you know?
Yeah.
Which, hell,
I want him to see. Maybe I'll ask him about Dow Loggins. So, what do you really think? Because I'm seeing here, Shane. I don't. Walk through this hire with me because often just read off his career stats as a play caller.
Okay, Gene. Did you?
Where's Gene? Then him. Find Gene in the crowd. I got you, Gene, and just sit down. Drop the mic, and it's Thursday. Drop the mic and just walk out.
Hey, Gene, I got your back. All right, Shane. Dow Loggins here.
Oh, I'm
Oh
kidding.
man,
Kidding.
it's gonna be a good time. We're gonna have a ton of fun. And on three is gonna be on Radio Row. So Andy Staples will be there, JD Piquel, and then we're gonna be doing some of our interviews there as well. So if you want to hang out at the Hyatt, the new Hyatt downtown Nashville,
Yeah, I
come
have
see
even no
about it.
idea what it's even going to look like here because it's going to be
Oh,
totally
it's a new
different.
place.
Like
Go
their
exploring.
SEC Network's doing a whole big show Tuesday night on Lower
Yeah,
Broadway,
yeah.
so it's going to be a scene down there
For
for
the
sure.
Midland concert. Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. So should be a great time. Can't wait to see you down there in Nashville for our good friends at Bird Dogs, Monticello Bank. He's Adam Luckett. I'm Nick Roush. Go Cats and go Kroger.